O heavenly King, the Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art everywhere and fillest all things, treasury of blessings, and giver of life, come and abide in us, and cleanse us from every impurity, and save our souls, O good one. Thank you. Please be seated. Our guest speaker tonight is Father Bohdan Hladio from St. John the Baptist Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Oshawa, Ontario. He is originally a native of, is it Ambridge? Ambridge, Pennsylvania, which is not Aliquippa, and it's not Pittsburgh, but right in between. Ambridge, I'm thinking that must be the bridge dedicated to St. Ambrose in Milan. So it's
American Bridge Company.
Oh, it's a name. Oh, I see. Okay, it's an American bridge company. I see. It's just trying to strip everything holy out of the history of North America. Father Bohdan received our family into the Orthodox Church, and so if there is anything good that our family should provide you in the Orthodox faith, you can say a prayer of thanks for Father Bohdan, and if anything we do wrong, you can blame him, because we offer very little. Father Bohdan was raised a Ukrainian Catholic and became Orthodox in the 1990s, at which time he began serving, as he does now, in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Canada as pastor at our own parish here in Hamilton of St. Vladimir's, which is not far away from here, the beautifully domed St. Vladimir's Church in East Hamilton. Following that, Father Bohdan served for a number of years as Chancellor of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Canada, so he's carried a heavy cross and knows what that feels like. And following that, he now serves, as I said, in Oshawa at St. John the Baptist parish there. He is married to his wife, Dobrotica Tanya, and has three children, because I think of them as three children. Three adult married children, who aren't children, 2 sons and a daughter who are known to some of us. And it's a pleasure to have him back home in Hamilton. If you join me in welcoming, please, Father Bohdan Hladio.
Now, this is the first I hear about talk and question and break and talk and question and break. So, does the eminent Dean of All Saints of North America have any direction for the poor benighted speaker as to how long one should talk before there's a break?
Whatever you like, Father. You just give us the direction that works for you.
Okay, good. Well, we'll break it up in the middle somewhere. Okay, good. Yes, okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be back home in Hamilton. Oh, Zorka's here. Hi, Zorka. Yeah, good to see all of you. Tonight, I don't think that, at least pretty certain I'm not going to say anything that any of you don't already know. So don't expect any gangbusters. A lot of times we need not so much to be instructed, but simply to be reminded. And so probably the vast majority of what I'm going to say tonight is just in the interest of reminding all of us, essentially of what's important, and hopefully just trying to ground us in a sense of, we might call it, Christian common sense. The reality, the title is called Balancing Family Life in a Fast-Paced World. And I really like it when somebody gives me a title. Makes it much easier. And Father Jeffrey, it was at St. Vladimir's feast day on the 28th of July here that you mentioned that you were doing this series and all of that, and would you talk? And so yes, I said I would talk, and so he eventually sent me the title, and I thought, yeah, this is a very good title. So when we begin to think about that, balancing family life in a fast-paced world, we sort of have to set the baseline. Now, the first part of the talk is going to be very interactive, so you're going to do a lot of talking in the first part, because I got a lot of questions for you, okay? And the first question is, take a minute and think. When you think of the reality of life in this world, and when you think of the reality of what we would normally call spiritual life, just put those two realities, sort of try to hold them in your mind. And when you think of the reality of life in this world, what comes to mind? What characteristics? What adjectives? When you think of spiritual life, what does it make you think of? What associations do you draw? So let's just start with life in this world. Any particular things, if you hear that phrase, life in this world, what do you think of?
Stress.
Please?
Stress.
Stress, okay.
Distraction.
What?
Distraction, okay.
Struggle.
Struggle.
Patience.
What?
Patience.
Patience. What else?
Desire to be successful.
Success. Stress. Success. Lots of S's. Struggle. What else was there? Patience.
How about lack of patience?
I will put im, because it could go either way. What else? Stress, success, struggle,
Greed.
greed,
Distraction as well.
distraction. Yeah, that was. Okay, let's just hold on to that for a minute. Now, when you hear the phrase spiritual life, what words do you think of? What associations does it draw?
Prayer.
What?
Prayer.
Prayer.
Ascetic.
Meaning.
What?
Peace.
Peace.
Meaning.
Meaning.
What did you say?
Meaning. Purpose. Purpose. Eternal life. Eternal life.
What?
I actually think of struggle too.
You think of what?
Struggle too.
Struggle. Good. No, that's fine.
Acts of mercy, like almsgiving
Okay.
and visiting the lonely,
Okay. Acts of mercy.
the elders,
Okay.
the sick,
Good.
the prisoners.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've got for that prayer, asceticism, peace, meaning, eternal life, struggle, acts of mercy, and I mean you could go on and on with either one of these things. The interesting thing is that just from our very quick little exercise here, there's nothing there really in common, right? And that tends to be the way we feel about it. That there is a real divide between what is spiritual and what is our everyday, quote-unquote, kind of life. So that says something. Okay, that says something. And the point would be just, it says something. So now we have to talk about what it might possibly say. Next question for you guys. What is the goal of our life? Okay, what is the goal of our life? And so we can ask a couple of other questions. A, what is life? B, what is life for? And then we'll get to C in a minute, but I just want to start there. So tell me, what's life? We get to all the philosophical questions. What is life? Even before we get to what is life for, what is life? Anybody know? Anybody got an answer? I'm not saying I know. I'm just saying if we're going to talk about life, we ought to have some idea what it is we're talking about.
I think life is to commune with God and commune with man.
Okay,
To
so
be in relationship with God and with man.
okay, so life, he would say, is fundamentally a relational reality.
Right.
Okay, what else? What is life?
A gift. A gift.
A gift. Okay, life is a gift. I didn't go out and buy it. I didn't deserve it, whatever that means. I just got it, right? Okay, so life is relational, life is a gift. What else?
A test.
Life is a test.
Chances.
What?
Chances, because any moment God can take your life away, so you should be thankful for all the chances that He's given you.
Okay, okay, opportunity. Okay, life as opportunity. Good.
Your family, your children.
Remember the gospel where Jesus talks about what is a man's life? Yeah, a life is not what we wear or what we have or whatever, right? So you talk about, what is dearest to you. That is your life. And I mean, you hear that. That's the phrase we use, right? Oh, hockey is his life, right? Yeah, okay. What else?
Right.
Life.
I don't know. To me, the word comes also to enjoy God's creation. Like that is what it is.
Seeing the world.
When we go out and in a beautiful scenery and thanking God for the scenery, for the beauty that He has created. He created it for us.
Okay, let's go to the next one. What is life for? What's it for?
Salvation.
What?
Salvation.
Okay, salvation.
To get us close back to God.
Okay.
As we can.
Okay.
Deification.
What?
Deification.
Deification, theosis,
Yeah, to improve ourselves.
to improve ourselves. And you know that from time immemorial, different people, just like in our very own day, would give absolutely different, diametrically opposed answers to these questions. There were people who would say, what is life? They say life is an accident. They wouldn't say it's a gift, they'd say it's an accident, right? Okay? They wouldn't say life is something to be enjoyed, but life is something to be endured, right? Okay, you have that. What is life for? They would say it's not for anything. There's no meaning, just sort of happened. Your parents happened to meet each other, and, if my mother didn't come over from Ukraine after the war, I wouldn't be here, and big deal, and it wouldn't make any difference anyway. Right? So these are really fundamental questions. And we can't talk about balancing family life in a fast-paced world unless we really have some idea of what life is, right? So I think most of us here in this room would agree that life is not simply an accident. It's not totally, a chance occurrence. That there is a meaning behind it, that there is some type of overarching, if you want to use a very nice postmodern phrase, a very nice overarching meta-narrative that puts it all into, the proper context, right? That it all holds together. So we agree as Christians that all of this holds together. The universe, the creation, the people, the nature, everything, right? It all holds together. And so that there is such a thing as life, and there is such a thing as the meaning of life. And one... Oh, there it is. The first real important point is that if we're really going to understand things in a Christian, in an evangelical way, we have to hold on to something which I'm sure many of you have heard of a very famous Orthodox theologian, Father Alexander Schmemann. Okay? He famously bemoaned the loss of this. Now, you guys in back probably can't tell too well. I just wrote up here, eschatological vision. Anybody know what eschaton or eschatology has to do with?
The ending, I guess.
The ending, yeah. The last things, okay? Anybody ever hear of eschatology? It's sort of a sub-degree of theology, and it's about the end times, right? You read the book of Revelation. It's about eschatology. You read, 22, 23, 24, 25 chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel. It's about eschatology. What's going to happen? When the world ends, when everything's over, when the curtain comes down and the play's over, what happens, right? The eschatology. And so Father Schmemann would bemoan the loss of the eschatological vision. The early Christians, you read St. Paul's epistles, for example. Anybody ever been to a funeral in an Orthodox church? You have a young parish. It's not like, in my parish, all the hands would go up. Who knows offhand what the epistle reading for the Orthodox funeral is? Who can remember? No? Please.
Imagine being caught up in the clouds.
Yeah, exactly. From the Second to the Thessalonians about the what some of our dear Protestant brothers and sisters interpret as meaning something like what they call the rapture, which is just weird. It's about the end times, about the end of the world, and this is what the Christians were waiting for. They were waiting for Jesus to return. And they lived their life expecting him to return any time. Do you know why our churches face east? Why? What?
Where the sun rises with the light comes into the world?
Symbolically, but there's an even more...
That he'll come...
Yeah, that when Christ returns, he's going to come from the east. You ever go to an Orthodox cemetery? People are buried facing the east. So there's the east. So when Jesus comes, I come, whoop, and face to face, right? And this was the expectation in the early church. And in the gospel, again, if you read the gospel, it's everywhere. Where, the parable about the man who, if he knew that the thief was going to come and dig under, get into his house in the middle of the night, he wouldn't sleep, right? The parable of the 10 virgins, right? All of this that we have to always be ready. And again, with due respect to the poor benighted people who are into all this Bible prophecy and all this kind of stuff, and Jesus says, and nobody knows when it's going to happen. Nobody knows. So by the way, if somebody, a televangelist on TV tells you he knows when Jesus is coming back, you just tell them on the basis of that very same gospel that you purport to believe in, Jesus says nobody knows. You're supposed to be ready all the time. And so this is that eschatological vision. If if Jesus returns tonight, we should be happy. I had a really nice talk with the kids at camp this past summer. We have a Ukrainian Orthodox camp down in Pennsylvania, and I go every year. And we were talking about this, and I said, you got these 15, 16, 17-year-olds there. I say, okay, don't think about it. This evening at 6 o'clock, we're getting ready to go into the dining hall, and the sky rolls up, and the trumpet sounds, and all the angels come, and here comes Jesus on the clouds. What thoughts are going through your head? And the one girl was like, I haven't lived yet. No, I want to get married, I want to have kids. So, like absolutely normal thoughts, right? But that just, again, spiritual life, life in this world, right? We get so caught up in life in this world, like, no, but I got my recital tomorrow. No, Jesus, wait, Okay, I got to do my grade 10, whatever it is. Okay, so this is a really important thing, the eschatological vision. And the eschatological vision, really, if we come back to the questions, what is life? What is life for? What is the goal of our life? Well, it's all eschatology. Okay? That's it. Whether we die and then meet Christ, whether we're still on earth and Christ comes, it really doesn't matter. That's the point. Okay? So next time you're in church for a funeral, listen to the epistle. And that's the point. Okay? So the eschatological vision. That's when we talk about the goal of our life, when we talk about the meaning of life, when we talk about what life is for. As Christians, we can't talk about that. It can't be, well, you know, I think I want to become a patriarch so that then I can put order in the church, right? And, you know, no. It's about Jesus. And Jesus was here, and Jesus taught us, and Jesus is coming back again, so keep your nose clean, right? Okay? So this is really important. This is gigantically important, and we have to remember that. And it's not something scary. It's not something scary, okay? We were doing a book study last year out in Whitby, and for some reason, you know, these things happen for a reason. For some reason, stuff kept coming out about the book of Revelation. So we were talking about what we're going to do next year. So we thought, well, you know what? Let's just do book of Revelation, right? And one of the people there said, oh, you know, that book really scares me. Okay? Well, you know what? It shouldn't. Because the idea is, you know, we mentioned about life. He remember what he said? What's life? It's relational, right? So if that relationship with Jesus Christ is real and true, here, now, in our lives on this earth, then there certainly is nothing to be afraid of. Okay? Yeah, it's terrible what happens. But, you know, one of the people here was just telling me today about this, I think, 29-year-old woman and her baby were assaulted by a 12 and a 14-year-old in Toronto, right? Well, that's terrible, too. There's all kind of terrible stuff that's really terrible that happens every day in the world we live in. So, how do you assimilate that into your consciousness without this, without Christ, without, you know, some type of understanding of the triumph of good over evil? I mean, how do you do that? So this eschatological vision is extremely important for us when we talk about these things. So we talked about what life is, what the goal of our life is, etc. But we're talking about family life. So now we have to talk about family. What's family? That's a gigantic question in our society right now. What is family? Okay, so I open it up to that. What's family?
A small church.
Yeah.
A small church. Okay. Small church. What else?
Happiness.
Happiness. Family.
Community.
Community.
Communion.
Communion. And as we all know, you could have community without communion.
I think of home and stability.
What?
Home and stability.
Home. And then stability. Okay.
Place of formation.
That's ideally. I think of struggle again.
What did you say?
I think of struggle again.
Struggle? Yeah? No, absolutely. And we'll get to that, don't worry.
Support.
Stability, okay, support. No one thinks a family is an economic unit? No good communists here? What's the matter with you? Zorka.
Joy.
Joy, okay.
A little piece of heaven.
Heaven. Union. Okay.
Love.
I was thinking of the image of the Trinity.
Oh, nice.
You know,
Okay. I should put image there because that's very important. Okay.
Love.
What?
Love.
Love. Okay, yeah, and again, I mean, you would have people who would define a family as an economic unit. You would have people who would define a family as a biological unit. You would have people who would define a family as an antiquated understanding of human, human structures. Okay. So when we talk about the family, you can look at it, of course, in terms of economics or in terms of biology. Okay, but again, as Christians, our question really would be, what is the theological understanding of the family? Another way to put it is, what is the Christian meaning of the family? Okay, and for this, we're going to come exactly to what you said. We believe that human beings are created in the image and likeness of God. Okay, that's just Catechism 101, right? Now we know, and this is something that for the Orthodox is extremely present, whereas it, generally speaking, isn't terribly identifiable in many of the Protestant sectarian teachings. And even if you go to, like a Roman Catholic service and thing, you wouldn't see it anywhere near as you would see it in the Roman Catholics, and that is the fact that God is a Trinity. Our church is totally Trinitarian, and God is a Trinity. And so if we're created in the image and likeness of God, we are created in the image and likeness of the Trinity. And the Trinity is in one sense, a community, a communion, right? And so when we look at the family, we can see, and again, these things are very fluid, right? Because who can understand the Trinity? Nobody can understand the Trinity. But yet, we have these ways of understanding God based on his revelation. I mean, Jesus says he has a Father, right? He sends the Spirit, right? So we talk in these categories. Well, for us, we are social beings. Well, of course we would be. Because God, in one sense, not to be very disrespectful of it, and God is a social, we would say a being, but God isn't a being, God is way above being, right? But God is community. So community is important for us. And the first instance of how that can possibly work is in a family. That's the first instance. Because unless there are some tragic circumstances, most people are going to have some type of a family unit that they are born into, and at least for their first formative years, raised up within. And that's different people. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are all different, but they're all the same. Mommy, daddy, and, daughter, they're all different people, but they're all the same, right? You get this dynamic going on. And potentially, it's a very, very beautiful understanding of how this thing we call the family should work in its, if you want to say, in its most positive manifestation. So we can look at the family as an image of the Holy Trinity, just as we look at man as an image of God. Okay? So, we've been through this first little thing where I've put you through the ropes and asked you questions about this, that, and the other. the reality, life in this world, the spiritual life. What is the goal of our life? What is life? What is it for? The eschatological vision, which is what I really want you to remember. And then the family. What is the family? What's our theological understanding of the family? Everybody in the family, they are different, but they're the same. They're united with what? Well, they're united, ideally, by the same thing that unites the Holy Trinity. And what unites the Holy Trinity?
Love.
What is God? Yeah. Okay? And so this is sort of the context we're talking in. Okay? This is our context. Okay? I'm not going to take the break now. I'm going to do one more point before we take the break. But before I do that next point, just any questions right now about what we've just gone through? Because that's sort of the groundwork for where we're going to go from here. So is this all sort of clear? Yeah? Okay. So that's, remember, eschatological vision. Now, we're going to come into the nitty-gritty of it. Okay? So, this is the phenomenon of overscheduling. Anybody know what overscheduling is? Tell me, what's overscheduling?
Sometimes I overbook myself.
For overschedule.
Yeah, like just too many things to do all at once.
Synonymous for multitasking.
Yeah.
Burning a candle at both ends.
Yeah, okay. Did any of you have, let's put it this way, have the opportunity to live close enough to grandparents or aunts or uncles perhaps, where you could just sort of pop in anytime? How many of you had that? I grew up in a little town, it was a mile to that end of town and a mile to that end of town and half a mile to where my grandparents lived and 3/4 of a mile to where my father's, side of the family lived. And so, you walk over to Baba's place and you say, "Hi, Baba." And she says, "Are you hungry?" And you say, "Sure." And she says, "Okay, go talk to your grandfather." And an hour later, she has food on the table for you from scratch, right? Okay? Even if you haven't had that experience, you can understand that such a thing in our day and age still might possibly exist. Okay? They weren't overscheduled. Okay, they weren't overscheduled. And when you think of those times, and if you think of the way we live, and I'm the same way, the way we live sometimes, and you want to say, okay, those are really good memories. That was really nice. That was really good. But could I provide that for my nieces, nephews, grandchildren, whatever? Right. Important question, the phenomenon of overscheduling, it's very common. The first thing we have to say about it is self-inflicted. It's self-inflicted. Okay? This is something we do to ourselves. I know people in the parish, who, good, dedicated, hardworking people, but you just want to say, I don't know if they still use the phrase, but when I was in university, somebody would go and you'd say, "Speed kills." That's what you got to say. Like they're just all over the place, and if you don't control it, it gets to the point where it really does. It kills everything, because then you end up losing joy. You end up not being effective of what you do, and all this kind of stuff, right? Zorka mentioned the very first thing. What did she say? Do you remember? What you said at the very beginning. When I said life in this world, you said?
Stress.
Yes, stress.
Too stressed that I forgot.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm putting you guys on the spot. Too much stress. Stress is gigantic. The deleterious effects of stress are, most people don't even realize. There's a doctor from Vancouver named Gabor Mate who did a book on stress. It's called When the Body Says No. And he goes through a whole bunch of different physical conditions, stuff like cancer and fibromyalgia and all kinds of stuff, and he links them all to stress. Not to say that there's a one-to-one, that stress causes this, but that it has a tendency to exacerbate what might be there already. Okay? So stress, both physically and mentally, is, and again, here's the proviso. There's a level of stress which is normal. It's normal. Okay? There has to be some degree of stress. When you want to run a marathon, you stress your body, so you build up little by little greater and greater endurance so that you can run 26 miles. Okay? And that kind of stress is constructive, unless you become a marathon freak. But it's constructive. Okay? You can do that. And the same thing when you are going to school. Okay? You have to do your tests. So if you have, a full course load and you have 5 courses, which any reasonable person should be able to do if they don't have any, big problems, and you have your tests at certain intervals and papers at certain intervals, you're stressed by it, but it's not overpowering stress that's, really crushing you, right? When we're talking about this type of stress, the very destructive, deleterious kind of stress, this is stress that is usually unnecessary. Okay, if it's self-inflicted, it's usually unnecessary. And it is over and above anything that's going to help you. Because, the old saying where what doesn't kill you makes you stronger? We're talking about the kind of stress that kills you, not the kind of stress that makes you stronger, okay? So that stress is very bad, and it plays out in many different ways. Plays out with your physical health, which will, of course, affect those around you. I was just sick this past week. I don't get sick often. Last time I was sick like this was in Hamilton in 1998 when I had to go bless houses. Anyway, my wife, she likes to come home and make me chicken bouillon or whatever it is. No, it's fasting. It was vegetable bouillon, chicken flavor. And, it affects the people around you if it's physical. If it's psychological, you've ever been around somebody who's like down in the dumps all the time? I get, if it's emotional, right? It's difficult, okay? So this affects not just us, all those around us. The time management, the phenomenon of overscheduling. You mentioned before that you sometimes schedule too much into the day, okay? The time management. We'll have a little handout for everybody, I guess we'll give it at the break, called Time Management and Orthodox Perspective by Dr. Al Rossi. Anybody know Dr. Al Rossi? He's a really holy man. He's the greatest. Dr. Rossi is the greatest. He has a podcast on Ancient Faith Radio called Become a Healing Presence. Listen to it. It's great. He's great. The issue of prioritization. And when we talk about prioritization, we're talking about what? What do you base priorities on?
Values.
Yeah. So, where are we going? What's it all for? That's why I started where I started. Because without having any idea of what's it all about, where you're going, what's it all for, what does it all mean, this talk is just, it's absolutely ludicrous. It's just me blathering about what I think other people should do with their lives, right? Okay, so that's the thing. We have this idea. The time management is going to depend on prioritization. And the prioritization is going to depend on all that other stuff we talked about at the very beginning. If we do it correctly, we will avoid unnecessary, unhealthy stress, and we will not self-inflict ourselves with insanity. So that's the end of part 1. So who has questions or anything else? Just to give you an idea of where we're going after the break, the next 4 are, number 5 is reasons for overscheduling. Number 6, the need for downtime or relaxation. Number 7 is the proper ordering of family life. And number 8 is family life as the front line in the battle for our souls.
Wait, is a break now?
Some questions now, if you have questions. Then
No, well, questions and comments.
Uh-huh.
And, I think it is. I always feel in this world, I'm talking of myself and our children, of course, we live in a kind of an unorthodox environment, and almost our orthodox life is somewhat artificial here. Like we're talking about stress, and I remember I was born in Greece when I came on 16, but I remember how my mother would work very hard, but then around 5 o'clock, the church tower bell rang, it's time to stop work. Next day is saying this and saying that. There were so many sayings that she was always wait, but it is almost like it's time for her to rest. Sunday she did not work, didn't do anything. Then it was St. George days, but the calendar kind of helped her to give order and help her really not to stress out. And even I remember right now, I'm stressed out. I have 10 grandchildren. I don't know their birthday. Okay. But if we're really truly Orthodox, we don't have to worry about that, because the Orthodox calendar said the patron day is the one we celebrate. And when I was young, it was St. George Day. The Georges celebrate. We go from one George to another. It didn't take us time to write it down. So the whole kind of structure help us not to stress out. Here we have to remember birthdays and anniversary days and you know, but we forget the feast days, which is already the church is so easy. Tell me when is St. John? Well, St. John is January the 7th. Everybody says so. Wherever we have Johns, we would remember it. Mm-hmm. So I kind of feel that the Orthodox calendar, the Orthodox lifestyle, mm-hmm. it kind of gave order. Mm-hmm. And help people to relax. And here we're just really confused.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult to.
We'll get exactly to this.
That's what I want.
We'll get exactly to that. Yeah. And you know what's neat about that though? Here, just one little thing, because we'll talk about that in the second half.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But what's neat is if you do with your kids, for example, celebrate the names day. Okay, birthday, but you celebrate the names day. Well, their friends or their aunts or uncles or whoever, they're going to celebrate the birthday, right? But this is something extra, and they tend to think it's really cool because they have something their friends don't have. Mm-hmm. You just have a birthday. I have birthday happy names, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right, and yeah. Anyway, any other questions before we break, or comments or anything? I have this article, so I'm just going to leave copies up here. Everybody can please take one. I'll be referring to it in the second part of the talk. Okay?